right, folks, so the phrase demography as destiny is attributed to French philosopher, also the famed father of sociology, Auguste Comte. And essentially it means that you need to have a growing population to have a growing economy. With that in mind, take a look at this. This is the birth rate of United States. And I got to tell you, if the statement, either that statement Auguste made is a lie or this is going to catch up to us later. I happen to believe it's the latter. It will catch up to.
Hey guys, welcome back to That Liminal Period. It's your girl, Chun-Li Shadi. And as you guys can see, today we're going to be watching and reacting to a recent story on Fox Business, and it's related to why Gen Zers are screwed when it comes to getting laid. I think it's going to be a very interesting video to watch, not only because it's relevant to Gen Zers, but I also think that millennials are also struggling to find love, get laid, be in committed, happy relationships. There are a lot of people dying alone, quite frankly. I think it's going to be interesting for us to continue the conversation and kind of get some stats behind it. Let's see what Fox Business has to say about this topic.
Later. So the question, of course, is can or will Gen Z come to the rescue? I want to bring in now New York Post columnist Rikki Schlott. All right, Rikki.
I know it was a question for her, but I would like to think that Gen Zers as well as millennials can turn the ship around if we're able to be successful in our communication and find people that are more compatible with us. I think that Gen Zers might have a better chance as far as like changing their perception and their mindset and attitude when it comes to dating and marriages. For a lot of millennials, their biological clock is calling, so there might still be some time for us to mend relationships and prove the way we view the opposite sex. Definitely think that Gen Zers have an opportunity, especially with the more conversations that are happening and people just calling out the BS. So yeah, I think Gen Zers can do it.
65 and older crowd will be 37% of our population come 2040. We need you guys to come to the rescue.
Yeah, I don't have too much faith in us, unfortunately. I mean, statistically speaking, the majority of young people who are childless right now, 56% say that they just simply don't want children. It's not.
So I want to share that real quick before I give my sense on why I think Gen Zers as well as millennials don't have kids. Like she said, 56% say they just simply don't want kids. And I think that's true in a lot of cases, especially for women. I think that most women in today's world, myself included, or I should say my younger self included, I was very selfish. I think the mindset or feminist ideologies growing up really did instill independence in me. Like, I remember just wanting to be the rich auntie that flew around the world and gave good Christmas gifts. Like, that was the world, like that social media painted for me. That was ideal, being able to travel, being able to shop, being able to go out, have girls' night, buy a house, be independent, be a boss babe. You don't need a man. So that ideology really did sink in for a lot of young women. Quite frankly, I think that because of that, the independent mindset, as well as most women don't have a financial dependency on men anymore. So it's less likely, like less incentive for them to tie themselves down. For men, I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think a lot of men want to be in relationships and want to have children, right? But I think because most men are either looked past or shamed into not getting into a relationship, I think for them it's a lot of protection. It's going to be protection of their asset, really. They take a lot of risk and have a lot of liabilities when it comes to marriages and having children. Even if you're not married, a man can be held responsible for child support. I think that men have a lot to lose, especially in America where the divorce rates are over 50%. If you had a 50% chance of losing half of your net worth, especially for men that are high earners or have really established themselves in the world, accomplished men, that's a hard bet to make. But yeah, let's see what she says outside of just simply not wanting them.
Given that it's a factor of circumstance, and I hear frequently from my friends they're worried about bringing kids into a dying planet and a climate catastrophe or the state of the world right now. And so I think it's even a little bit more ideological with young people today.
20 years ago, a professor in Japan, now Japan has always been ahead of us on this sort of social media, internet kind of stuff, and these improvised these games where you become the person in the game. So he came up with a phrase called grass eaters. Essentially, it was the young men there rejected their parents. Their parents were proud. They would work for the same company for 50 years. They would do a 2-hour commute both ways. And they were really proud of that. Instead, these kids, they slept all day. They played video games all night. They immersed themselves into this world. Their population is going to go from 120 million people to 80 million people. And about 50% of them said they have no interest in sex at all. The reason I bring that up is you wrote a pretty provocative article. It's called "When It Comes to Sex, My Generation is Screwed." I mean, is this a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that we have here that's even worse is our partisan politics situation, where we know that boys are going to the right and women are going to the left. And increasingly, they're saying that they refuse to date someone on the other side of the aisle. So more than half of women say that being a conservative is a red flag.
That's just the way the cookie crumbles, right? That's just how the stats rank. Most women are Democrats. They're left-leaning. That's where you see the teachers' union backing up the Democrat. Most teachers are female. Most men you're going to find, or most average men, are going to be right-leaning. Even black men are the fastest growing demographic of conservative voters. The opposite mindset, and because there is just so much that's tied into politics nowadays, like people nowadays are going to assume certain things about you if they know you're a conservative or if they know you're progressive. So I think it is really hard because, again, we're not having that communication. We're not effectively communicating with each other, same sex or opposite, why we support certain candidates or why we support certain policies or certain marches or protests. A lot of people are just influenced nowadays by the media. And again, because there's just so many sources within the media that are incorrect, that are correct, it's just hard to sift through. And so I think men who tend to go to different news outlet and different sources, and women who are also receiving their information differently and who are also raised differently, we're just completely opposite at this point.
More than half say listening to Joe Rogan is a red flag. And so
I love Joe. What is wrong with Joe Rogan? I love Joe, and I loved him when he still had hair. I loved him on Fear Factor. Joe is the man. I'm sorry. He's so funny, and he's like kind of cute, and he's a good dad. His wife is low key. Yeah, I'm sorry. I love Joe Rogan. If you listen to Joe Rogan, that's a thumbs up. That's a green check. That's a green flag. Women who are just so anti-Joe Rogan, who are just so anti-Jordan Peterson, anti-Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuels, Trump. It's like there are just so many opinionated women that are just not even listening to the entirety of the conversation. Joe Rogan has long-form conversations on his podcast. You know, if you're not only going to hear a snippet here and there, then just shut your face. Don't comment on it.
Kind of headed towards a demographical disaster if we can't bridge the divide, at least putting politics on the back burner for romance.
We can't,
How do you put it on the backside? How do you put it on the side when it's everywhere? I mean, that's...
Exactly. Like I said, it's everywhere. And you cannot put it on the backside unless you are really a centrist, and that's kind of hard to identify these days. It's really hard to put politics aside when it is affecting the education system. It's affecting careers. It's affecting so many different industries because of how they see immigration, how they see foreign politics. There's just so many different facets that politics has dipped its hands into. We don't share the same political views. And if you're actually an informed voter, then more than likely we don't share the same values. So how do I put my values aside? How?
You know, it's hard to find any part of the society, TV commercials, television shows, articles, books are being rewritten and re-edited in certain ways. How do you put it aside when it feels like who's ever pulling the strings actually trying to make it worse?
Well, I mean, that's why I think that we're really in a tough spot, young people. I mean, I, as a libertarian young woman, I'm often told, like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air because you're not going to be offended by everything that I say.
So are you kind of in the middle? Like, you're in a lonely island almost, aren't you?
Well, yeah,
they start
I mean,
quizzing
I think
you when you say you're in the middle,
dissenters
too.
are sort of the most valuable commodities. I know a lot of young men who play up their woke positions in order to get women, and they say that it's been pretty effective, actually.
You know, there was an old saying, and I would think it still applies, that
They're playing it up because they know women fall for that shit. That's what I mean by it's like, you actually got to start vetting them out. Ask them the questions. Don't just listen to a guy because he's blue pilled or whatever. Just because they are saying what you want to hear. No, like that shouldn't work. Like you should be asking the right questions. You should be making sure that you guys are compatible, that you guys have common values, that you guys are effectively communicating. She's saying that being a centrist or being a libertarian has been a plus for her, which I'm sure it is, but men are using that. Like they're lying about that. Like they're actually lying about that to get laid.
When you're young and you don't have a heart, like you're not, it goes something to the fact that when you're young and you're not liberal, you don't have a heart. Yeah. When you're older and you're not conservative, you don't have a brain.
Yeah.
I mean, could it just be that same thing going on? Is there something deeper?
I think that the crazier part is that we just know that young people are forking. So it's less a factor of age. We know that the boys are going right. And the girls are going left.
Is that because the young men feel hopeless? I mean, this is a society that's been trying to rewrite the fact that women make less than men. And it feels like the push has been to give women a push. And it's come at the expense of men or young men.
Absolutely. A lot of young men, I think, definitely feel like the girl power stuff is disproportionate and that boys are disenfranchised in society today. I would also say that I think the left right now really panders to some more female proclivities to be more empathetic and emotional and want to protect people and do the right thing and be charitable. And so I do think that there is almost a feminization of the left wing.
So I think I've got good news for you.
Okay.
A new app is on the way. Are you ready for it?
I am ready for it.
All right. This app starts with it scores your here we go. This is your score, your dating app for people with good credit. So at the very least, you're getting a 675 on up. I mean, would that help?
I'm not sure about this one. I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation starter, but I think if you're filtering particularly for financial reasons, it might be a little transactional for my taste.
Really? I mean, isn't one of the big mistakes is people don't have honest.
Women will say they care about the finances and credit score and everything, but there are plenty of women, especially here in Atlanta, that are really down to date scammers. Okay? Those scammers aren't going to have credit score. They're dealing in cash, no?
Conversations about finance or when it comes to young folks, it's still about
the first
magnetism.
Date, though,
yeah.
I don't know if you're building your credit, if you forgot one bill but you're headed back on the right track. I don't want to just filter you out for that reason.
Demographics as destiny. Are we right now? It feels almost like we're not going to catch up. I mean, is it possible to ever have another baby boom?
I don't know. I mean, I do think that there's like a small subgroup of Gen Zers who are starting to come around and realize that like a traditional family life is valuable.
I saw something the other day where women, young ladies at high school, at college graduation, were all wearing engagement rings. I mean,
I think there's a little revival of some traditional values, but I would say by and large, my generation is more skeptical, even if it's a financial element as well too. I mean, don't underestimate how many young people are just underwater with student loans that they can't pay back too, and $250,000. You
can still get married. You can still have kids.
$250,000 to raise the average kid up to 18 today. I mean, it is crazy. So I think that there's a whole host of reasons, and I'm not too optimistic.
I will tell you, having a daughter is the reason I succeeded on Wall Street. I was cold calling, 100% commission. I would have quit if it was not for me having a baby.
Wow.
So that made me successful.
Motivation.
Rikki, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
So as you guys can see, this Gen Zer doesn't actually feel very optimistic about it. I don't blame her, but at the same time, being negative about it is actually not going to help this case at all. If anything, it's going to probably make you more depressed and make you feel even more hopeless and helpless and apathetic as far as like getting into a relationship. It's a sad case, a sad position that one of the most developed nation out there can't seem to get it right when it comes to relationships. I think that countries or places that tend to prioritize education, independence, productivity as far as going to work, not that it's a bad thing, it's a great thing and it's a necessary thing. But people who prioritize it, such as countries like Japan, China, South Korea, in those nations, you have a much higher older population. They're not reproducing at the same rate that they are passing away, which is a sad case, and it looks like that's the case with America and the direction that we're going towards. The fact that we're not being able to sustain relationships. There are actually cases in China now where men are having mail order brides. I know everyone has heard about mail order brides from Asia coming to America or different South American countries, East Europeans. A lot of times men will go overseas, marry a wife, or there's matchmaking services here in America where they find you someone that's overseas and they bring them here. Crazy part was because China had the one child policy, a lot of people were choosing to keep their sons. So now there's a shortage of females in China. So now they're doing the exact opposite, where they're actually importing women from other countries so that they can repopulate. They're also going over to Africa and repopulating, reproducing with African women so that the Chinese bloodline still continues. So that's just crazy to me. And I really don't know if America is going to get quite that far. I know many people have already talked about passport bros. Even Ben Shapiro has mentioned it in recent months. So men are still seeking love. They're still looking to have relationships and have families. They're just not doing so with the Western women. They are traveling to Thailand for a reason. They're going to Colombia for a reason. DR. You know, it's a sad situation, and the accessibility that we have to people nowadays, it's also making it a lot easier for people to have a mindset that they'll just find someone else later on down the line that's perfect. Someone that makes it worthwhile for men to take that risk, for them to take on those liabilities and be married. It's going to take a lot for women nowadays to sit at home and step back into the traditional feminine role, make you a sandwich, do the chores around the house, put your career on the back burner, don't travel as much. So many different luxuries and conveniences in the world that we're used to nowadays that it's going to be really hard to actually find the majority of people wanting to have these relationships. But anyways, I'm still super optimistic about it. And like I said, I think that Gen Z and millennials can turn this ship around if we try really, really hard and continue to have these conversations.